and welcome to the Montessori Family channel. I am Karine, a mom of two and a Montessori teacher. In this video I'm going to discuss with you pretend play. Do we need to let our children play pretend? Is it in line with the Montessori ideas? Montessori is well known to encourage children to have real experience and to participate in the daily life activities such as cooking, taking care of the house and themselves. At first, she was not against toys. In her first classroom, some generous benefactors donated toys to the children. But she quickly realized that she observed that the children themselves, when given the opportunity, prefer activities based on reality. You don't find proper toys in the classroom. Yet the children are happy, contented and learn with joy. Here in the UK, many nurseries encourage lots of pretend play. They introduce a house corner, a dressing up area, and pretend play based on fantasy as well, like a special Let's Go to the Moon Day or Superhero Week. But if your child attends an authentic Montessori school, there will be no toys or activities that will promote pretend play actively. So are the Montessori schools lacking something here? What does it mean? So first, let's discuss how children play. Before the age of 2, the child is in an unconscious stage. He explores his environment, he comes upon opportunities. When he plays, he is in fact manipulating, exploring and trying to figure out what is he playing with. He will develop his gross and fine motor skills and explore through his 5 senses. He will develop his language to play and he will interact and connect with his close caregivers. In fact, young children are hardwired to explore. During that stage, babies might interact with each other, but they don't really play together. They are too busy developing their own skills. From 2 years old, your child starts to express his will. It's a bit different then. It's a conscious stage according to Maria Montessori. And that starts around 3 years old, but we kind of all have observed that children around the age of 2 start to express their will, right? They start to say no. And it's when they start to choose what they want to do or to play with. It's a time when the child starts to think about things in their minds. So they know that when objects are out of sight, they are still somewhere. They start to know that when you leave the room, you go somewhere else. Even if they still don't know when you're coming back. Because of those new thinking abilities, they can now engage in pretend play, play based on imagination. It doesn't mean yet that they will play with someone else. At first, it's what we call the stage of parallel play. Children play alongside each other without interaction. And now, let's chat about what is pretend play. Now your child's minds can imagine and pretend. They can use one thing to represent something else. They take a wooden block and pretend to eat it. Or they take a stick and put it to their ear to use a phone. At first, you will notice that your child imitates you and any actions that he is familiar with, that he is exposed to. He will probably start with the activities that you carry on often with him. It's where Montessori and mainstream nurseries or mainstream preschool education will differ. As a Montessori teacher, I would encourage you to expose your child to many concrete and realistic resources. Your child will show an interest for what is he naturally exposed to. His play will be influenced by what he experiences. For example, if you go to the farm often with your child, it's likely that your child will naturally imitate the animals he sees, the tractor noise, and so on. If you want to offer toys and resources to your child to develop his imaginary play, then you can offer him some farm animals, plastic toys, and some farm books. But if he is exposed to a pretend play, scene that has no meaning for him, he will not use it in the expected way. I will give you an example. I remember going to the local play group with my son, who was just over 2 years old. And the team had set up a post office in the little Wendy house. So my son wandered inside the playhouse and started to hand me the envelopes through the window, telling me, "Coffee, mommy, coffee." And so he pretending that to drink coffee and eat cakes with the envelope. So the lovely member of staff came closer and attempted to show him how to post the envelope, adding a stamp and so on. So I went on to explaining to that lady that my son hasn't been to a post office often, was not really exposed to that, because I rarely go to the post office, and he was playing coffee shop instead. An experience that he was very familiar with because we were going to the coffee shop eating cake. Another example with my daughter. We were living in Ireland at the time and we were flying back to my home country roughly every 3 months since she was 4 months old. So one day we visited a friend who had a son of similar age. They were both around the age of 2, and that little boy had a plane toys with all the little peoples and luggage and everything for to play airport. And my daughter started to play eagerly, placing the people in the plane, rolling the luggage, placing the pilot at the right seat, and so on, taking off to visit granddad. My friend then told me that her son had never played with the toy. They've had it for a long time, he had never really experienced traveling by plane, so he had no interest in the toy. On the contrary, my daughter, who was very familiar, could really play with it in a way that was, realistic. So, do we allow pretend play? Is it compatible with Montessori? Yes, of course, but the main difference with Montessori would be to encourage imagination based on reality. Montessori recognized that children's ability to imagine things that were not actually present demonstrated a special mental ability of high order. She saw that it was a foundation of intelligence itself and that it was responsible for the curiosity that underlays all scientific exploration of the environment. Imagination is the real substance of our intelligence. All theory and all progress comes from the mind's capacity to reconstruct something. So it's quite important to introduce pretend play to your child. But Maria Montessori encourages us to avoid fantasy and limit fairy tales, fantastic characters, and anything that is not real. Obviously, this has evolved since the time to include TV characters, the merchandising promoted by fast food restaurants, and so on. Maria Montessori said, "Imagination really does not enter into the problem, because in telling fairy tales, it is we, the adult, who do the imagining. The child only listens. The young child cannot distinguish well between the real and the imaginary, between things that are possible and things that are merely made up. By telling fairy tales or giving toys to children based on fantasy, we impose our adult imagination upon them. When given a choice, children will be naturally drawn to realistic stories, toys, and activities. It seems that nowadays we mainly encourage fantasy and we want to let our children play to protect their own childhood. So there is a big emphasis on play and on pretend play based on fantasy. It's very typical of our Western culture. It's especially true since the apparition of television and the development of merchandising. And in fact, studies of children in traditional societies illustrate the dominance of reality-based play outside our modern Western culture. In fact, kids like to do real things because they want a role in the real world. Our society has gone overboard in stressing the importance of pretense and fantasy for young children. And when given a choice, a 3 to 6 years old preferred performing real activities over pretending to do them. Encouraging pretend play, even based on reality, shouldn't be done to the detriment of real experience. So for a child, it is always more interesting to prepare his own snack than to pretend cooking. A question that is often asked in my group and by the parents I work with is, should I buy a play kitchen? My answer is always the same. You don't need a play kitchen, but if you give one to your child, make sure that you will also give lots of opportunities to your child to really cook, to use the sink, to prepare his own snack, and so on. If you want a dressing up area, a play kitchen, and so on, go for it. But allow your child to develop real skills too. Many parents have hacked a toy kitchen to make it usable for a real purpose, so you can do that. After all, the pretend play kitchen is a perfect size for a child. Be also aware that commercial pretend play toys are very self-limited. The toys plane is a plane only, the fireman outfit can only be used in a certain way, and so on. So try to have a balance between those toys and some more open-ended resources such as blocks, scarves, and even some recycled materials or natural items. This is where your child will really play with his own imagination. Now, can you introduce fantasy at some point? Yes, again, yes of course, but let your child guide you. When your child is verbal, when she can distinguish between reality and fiction, she is going to start to pretend more and more by herself. She might pretend that she can fly like a butterfly, and yes, even if you don't introduce fantasy in your home, your child will be exposed through friends, schools, and screen to superheroes, fairies, and so on. My children are now 6 and 10, and I noticed a shift of perception from the age of 4 years and a half. Before, they couldn't really be sure if the fantasy characters were real or pretend. So I allow them to explore those fantasy worlds without going overboard by offering them, plenty of fantasy-based toys. I started by allowing some toys that would still promote, open-ended play. And I would allow them to create stories instead of playing just a script written by adults. So at first, I favored dressing up to fixed playset, or I would combine the figurines to some open-ended toys. I would make sure to offer a balance with more opportunities for reality-based play and real experiences than fantasy. But for sure, right now, my son is totally into superheroes, and he explores the stories, read books about superheroes, and play with his figurines. He also plays with various open-ended resources and many kinds of building blocks. He pretend play with his sister, he draws and creates in many ways. And both my children participate in the day-to-day chores. 5 tips to conclude. Favor reality-based toys and activities for the children in their early years. Allow your child to help you in the house and to experience firsthand the world around them. Extend those experiences with toys and resources if you wish. Offer open-ended toys too, and introduce fantasy slowly by following your child's interest. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you want to watch more, please subscribe and see you next time.